You're listening to Mission Eve, a podcast that explores the stories of women who are opening the frontier of space to humanity. Your host is Megan Crawford, managing partner of Space Fund, a venture capital firm investing in the space industry. She is a mother, volunteer, founder, and true believer in humanity's future in space. Mission Eve is meant to inspire the girls of today who will be the women of tomorrow, leading our first permanent off-world settlements. Space needs women. Space needs you.
Welcome to Mission Eve. I'm Megan Crawford. I'll be your host today, and I'm very excited to introduce Kelly Larson. Hello.
Hi, Megan.
Glad to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's a pleasure.
I'm really excited to talk to you today about your background, what got you here, and then what you do in the space industry that's so exciting. So let's start at the beginning. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? And did that have an influence on who you are and why you're in the space industry?
I was born in Norfolk, Virginia. My parents were both in the Navy. And I didn't live there for very long, but I know that my parents, when they came together, used to do a lot of stargazing, and my dad always had a love of stars. So then I was raised in rural Iowa on a farm, and definitely, right? I mean, where we grow up does so much shaping of who we are. And so I grew up in nature and very much under the sky. And my dad would sometimes, with my brother that was closest to age in me, and my dad and I would sometimes sleep outside on the ground stargazing. And I fell in love with the sky, with the stars. I used to wonder during the day where the blue turned to black. And I spent a lot of my childhood thinking about the stars and thinking about space. And that paired with a certain level of alone time that naturally comes when you're in a very rural place. I had siblings, but I spent a lot of time reading. So between sci-fi and fantasy fiction and spending a lot of time staring at the sky, there's a lot of space for dreaming and being in love with space.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Was there any defining moment or specific person or incident in your childhood that really led you to want to go to space or to want to be involved with space?
In my childhood, I think, the reality is I was a big dreamer, and when I was young, I struggled a lot when I was young. So I didn't believe in all of my dreams so much, but I had them and they were buried deep. It was more when I got older that I let myself believe. So I would say that general orientation toward mystery in the skies and just wondering what the stars were and what was actually happening, and then watching Star Wars and Star Trek, and I always had that kind of dream. But I would say it was when I was an adult. I remember the most poignant moment was when I was attending some classes at Harvard, probably 10 years ago and a little less, and walking through the astrophysics area and feeling this depth of longing that I didn't realize existed. Because when I was a kid, the idea of being an astronaut sounded amazing, but I didn't think that was really possible for a farm kid. But walking through the astrophysics department, I realized I love space. I want to study space. I want to work in space. And I didn't know what that was going to look like, but I remember seeding that desire. And I think that seeding that desire, feeling it deeply, kind of opened something. It put me in touch with something that made it easy to say yes when things opened later.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Did you, growing up in a rural area in Iowa, I'm not sure if you would have had the chance, but did you ever get a chance to go to space camp or visit any NASA facilities or anything like that when you were a kid?
No.
None of that?
No, none of that.
Yeah.
No, the biggest space thing that I remember, I did a lot of, again, just staring and wondering, but the biggest thing I remember was the Challenger explosion. Yeah. And it really struck me, I guess, because I'd been intimate with loss in my own life. I lost my brother at a very young age. And something about that explosion and knowing there was a teacher up there and we were all, gathered in these classrooms, it struck me about, first of all, the fact that a teacher could go to space.
Yeah.
The tragedy of it, it kind of imprinted something in me, but it actually opened and sealed this curiosity about what was possible and what it would take to go to space. So I do remember that from my childhood, but no, there was no space camp for me at that time. It was pretty much farm space. It was lots of sky gazing.
Excellent. And I remember that as well. Obviously, we're sitting in elementary school. It was such a big deal with the teacher. Everybody's gathered in the auditorium to watch this thing happen live, and then for it to be such a tragedy. It was, I think all of us who were that age, I think it really imprinted on all of us. Yeah.
Right.
It was intense. So
yeah, it was this sense of possibility and then this total heartbreak.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was
wrapped into one. Yeah. It was devastating.
Yeah, devastating and kind of a turning point, it seems like, because everybody was tuned in. And then I think there was some heartbreak in our culture at that time.
Yes.
I hope that right now there's a reemergence that's actually bringing us back in touch with our love and belief in the possibility. But
absolutely.
It is a big risk, right? It's space.
Is. Space is hard, as they say. Yeah.
It's real. It's a real thing. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So talk to me about kind of leaving the farm. What did you do first? Did you go to college? What came next?
Yeah, I went to college. I went to college to study art. I had a deep love for art and science. And there's something about it's my connection, I think, to mystery and beauty. I decided to go the art route. And it was lovely. And then I went and I got into business. I got a degree in graphic design. And then I went to work for an advertising agency. And that was really interesting. And it was I liked it. I thought it was great. And then after a couple of years, I was studying organizational development and transformation because I was curious about how to grow organizations. And I went to present something to our executive director who was new. And I had this experience of speaking to him and getting this nod and smile that was totally not seeing what I was bringing to him or who I was. He hadn't been working with me as long as everybody else in the branch. And it was the first time in my life that I actually felt and believed something like a glass ceiling existed. I didn't in college. In college, I became president of student government. I organized all these movements and things. I just naturally ended up in leadership over and over again through my life, actually. And that became more apparent and more powerful in college. And I studied women's studies as a side topic, and I didn't really believe in the glass ceiling until that moment. And after that, I decided to leave that job and shifted my focus from organizational transformation to personal transformation. I wanted to understand what empowered people and let people overcome challenges, I had a challenging childhood, like I said, and I had to overcome a lot. So I got really curious about how to blaze a new trail, how to do things differently, how to be really vibrant as a human. And I left the corporate world. I went full alternative master's degree in integral transformation and just went deep into this and then have been on a really interesting journey since then.
Wonderful. So what, let's talk a little, let's take that to the next step. Tell me a little bit about that journey. Obviously you are the CEO of a space company now, and we'll get to that in a minute, but kind of how did we go from this personal transformation to CEO of space company?
Right. Yeah. How does that happen?
Yeah. I'd love to hear that story.
Yeah. Megan, there's something in me that decided pretty young that I was giving my life to service. And so some people, we all have our things that we're challenged with, right? We have our things of, self-worth or this or that, or people have a hard time, aren't sure that they're intelligent or they have imposter syndrome. We all have our things, right? One thing that I didn't ever have was a question about what I was supposed to do in life. And I'm not sure how I lucked out on that, but I say I followed the breadcrumbs. I knew that I was in service and that I was interested in human potential. I'm interested in humans being the best that they can be, the greatest that they can be. And so initially, I started really focusing on leaders. How do I bring transformation to leaders? How do I support leaders to be more deeply in touch with their own potential, to be more in touch with the awe of life? How can I help humanity be more in touch with the awe and the wonder that is life in every moment? I think absolutely. It's one of the most profound things we can do is relish life. Actually, like, oh my, wow, I'm not going to get these moments back.
Right.
So I let that lead me. And I did this master's degree. I did so many things. So I started out, actually, speaking of leadership, I started out with a very buying into the paradigm of leadership that feels very masculine. I worked in security for music production events for a few years.
Interesting. That's fun.
And then I moved into the production side of that at the most beautiful place at Red Rocks Amphitheater outside of Denver,
gorgeous.
Colorado.
Gorgeous. I've never been to an event there, but when I was there, I went recently. I went and actually saw it because, you heard so much about it and whatever. Yeah. So beautiful venue.
Oh my God, it was amazing, and that put me in touch with seeing people that were living their dreams. I was interacting with and supporting or driving around these rock stars and feeling something beautiful and seeing something consistent of these people that were being really successful in this front. And it opened some doors for me. And I also got to see some differences in how I can be an impact in the system that I'm in. So I was in leadership in there, and I got to watch things change over the years, and I got to see my own impact. And from there, I went into teaching high school at a charter school for a couple of years. And that was the hardest job I've ever done until this one. And so fulfilling and incredible. And that school closed, and I went to India and decided at that point I'd finished my master's degree, passionate about integral transformation. How do we help people evolve? How do we help people grow in all areas of their life? Because transformation, you don't just lose a bunch of weight and not have your mind impacted and not have your heart impacted, not have your world impacted. You don't just leave your job and not have your body impacted. These major changes happen and we think they're isolated. But what I realized is that we're whole ecosystems, we're whole beings, and transformation impacts the whole thing. So I did this very complicated or complex master's thesis, and then realized that yoga kind of does this in a really organic way. Right. And I could support people in transformation through yoga. So then I went to India and did a yoga teacher training and started transformational coaching and working really more specifically and directly with leaders and teaching yoga and wellness. So then from there.
Yeah. Okay. This is a fun journey. Yeah.
It's good. I really dove into teaching yoga and realized what a gift it was to be able to do that. And then I jumped into a doctoral program in transformative studies and went even deeper into the study of the evolution of consciousness in individuals and in the collective. What is consciousness? What does that look like for humans? And also, how does cultural transformation happen? And how does social transformation happen? And what are the difference between cultures and how they do business, how they function in the world? What is culture versus what are social dynamics? How does that relate to physical sciences? And studied cosmology, which once again got me in love, or reminded me of this deep, deep love of space. I took a course with this man, Brian Swim, who taught a course called The Cosmological Powers of the Universe.
Interesting.
And it put me in touch with space in a way that I didn't imagine. He basically brought the powers of the universe, or the ways that the universe behaves, the ways that the universe evolves in physical sciences, and then shows how we see that as humans. And it made space more here. We think that outer space is out there, right. But actually space is right here.
We're in it. Yeah, we're
literally in it. We are part of space. We're not, It's not like, oh, there's this thing out there that's cool called space. No, space. I am space. You are space, right? And that class was one of the defining moments of my life, I think, actually. So I proceeded to put together a cosmology for my dissertation, a theoretical dissertation that I did not write, but I still go back and read that proposal sometimes because it's a great topic. I might write a book someday. But
Excellent.
So I did that while teaching yoga. I developed something called the Center for Yoga Medicine. So one of my passions is seeing where this mystery and human transformation and leadership and growth meets science. How do you bring these things? How do you bring the wonder, the beauty, the awe, the art, the intuition, even the feminine to Western science? How do you speak to the broader world? I'm really interested in touching people who are not as satisfied in their life, who aren't living up to their potential. So I really looked at that. So in the Center for Yoga Medicine, it's very specifically bringing evidence-based yoga for medical conditions. Right. And it's basically, you've got chronic pain. Oh, you've got asthma. Oh, you've got arthritis, all these medical conditions. Oh, you've got depression. I did a bunch of work around that and got some global media attention around yoga for depression and anxiety. And we can bring yoga to do these things, but the side effects of yoga are a little different than the side effects of prescription medicine.
Yes, much better.
Right. So I would bring So I'd bring this to people and they would say, wow, my insomnia is better, but people at work are saying that I'm changed, I'm happier, my relationship's better, my marriage is happier, all these things. And it was, again, this beautiful way of bringing transformation.
Right.
Then I went and moved to Hong Kong. And there's so many things. I've done a lot of things. My journey, you're asking for my journey. I'm going to miss some of them. But on the side, I like bringing people together.
Yeah.
And I like seeing how cultures change and, again, supporting culture and growth. So I put together some events. I got into some event production in sustainability and permaculture in the Bay Area. I helped produce some events there. A major one was the Bay Area Permaculture Convergence years ago. In Hong Kong, I co-curated and produced TEDx Hong Kong one year and the Asia Consciousness Festival.
Fun.
Humanity Plus Hong Kong, which was really fun science, fun, like pressing the edges of science. So I continued to... these opportunities kept showing up and I got to speak about transformation. I got to work with leaders. I got to host a lot of workshops and help people find their own power and leadership. I followed that, came back from Hong Kong. And in the meantime, what ended up happening was I was starting to build businesses. And I was building businesses around transformation and leadership and yoga and wellness, and speaking on those things in different countries and different places. And somewhere in there, I met this woman in a yoga class, and she introduced me to one of her best friends. Her name is Becky. And then Michael was one of her very dear friends. And Michael asked me to consult for a company or for an idea that he had. And I did that, and that was really fun. And he said, I have this other idea for this aerospace company. He was an aerospace engineer. And he said, I really like what you're bringing. I want you to look at this with me. So I did, and it went really well. And he said, I want you to keep working on this with me. Will you keep consulting? I said, sure. And then he had also brought Becky in to do some consulting. And within the year, then he and his partner, Wayne Davis, invited Becky and I to come in and be partners in this aerospace project called now Aquarian Devices. So we became partners. That was 3 years ago. And then a year ago, I became the CEO.
Excellent.
So that's
how we got to here. Excellent.
I'm sure there are some missing pieces there, but essentially I like doing business. It's really interesting. I like exploring and creating things, and I love space. And it was it was really beautiful to figure out that I didn't have to go study astrophysics to do space, even though I might do it.
Right. Well, and that's the thing is you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be an astrophysicist, right? In this new era that we're in this space industry, this is an industry full of companies. Companies need marketing professionals and finance professionals and CEOs.
Exactly.
All of those skill sets are applicable to space just as much as they would be to any other industry. So there's a lot of opportunities there for very non-traditional, what you don't traditionally think of as space jobs. There's that opportunity set is growing rapidly right now. So,
absolutely,
and you're a great example of that. Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about Aquarian Devices and what you guys do and what your product is and all of that.
It's so fun. I love it. So our main focus right now is near Earth and deep space communications. So we're putting together, we're basically installing what some people might call the internet of the solar system. But essentially it is a network of satellites in space to communicate between the Earth, the Moon, Mars. And right now that communication is being provided by governments, and it's gotten us along so far. And we're at this moment that's really exciting where there's this explosion of interest, and suddenly everybody wants to go to the moon, and then they want to go to Mars after. And there are all these missions planned, and they're increasing rapidly by the month. Budgeted missions are increasing rapidly by the month. And the capacity to do communication for those things is not there. It's already very tight. It's already people fight over priority to be able to do it. And so we are coming in as the first big commercial offering to meet that market demand and help support governments, private companies to be clear, if anybody wants to go to space, if anyone here is watching or listening that doesn't know that, if anybody wants to go to space, they need to have communication.
Yes.
They need to be able to send signals for control, command, communication. So we are a provider for that. That's going to be a supplement or alternative for what's out there.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds, I agree with you completely. There's definitely a market need for this. And, the return to the moon is something that's obviously a national priority here in the States.
Yeah.
But this time it is going to be a much more commercial return to the moon. Yeah. So you're seeing lots and lots of companies who are going to need these and asteroid mining eventually and solar system wide. So I really like that you're thinking on a solar system scale. That's where my brain is most of the time as well. So
that's great.
So tell me a little bit about your job kind of day to day. You're CEO, right? So that just basically means putter outer of all fires, right? But just what's your day to day look like?
Wow. Yeah. It's a great question. It changes. We're an early stage startup. At this moment of this recording, we are raising our seed round. We will soon after be raising our Series A. Our technology is almost ready, and we're at the point right now where we are securing customers and investors. And so it's interesting. Stepping into this role for this company is the hardest job that I've ever had, and in a lot of ways the most fulfilling and the most exciting and amazing. And the day-to-day has changed tremendously. But I want to say one thing I've really discovered as I look at leadership, and I was referencing earlier, I started out with a really masculine version of leadership. I was really good at managing and controlling to make things happen. I thought that was how it went. And what I've learned over the last many years is that there's something else, that what we're leading, I don't want to manage people, I want to lead. And I don't want to control people at all. I want to make space. I want to empower. I want to make space for people to bloom and bring their gifts and thrive. And so leadership is about working with people.
Yep.
So a lot of it is that it's learning how to work with people that are different than me. Figuring out how to get our team to be on the same page and do the thing that's new, because I'm working with aerospace engineers that have never been executives before or done a startup before. And I'm working with advisors and figuring out, what to listen to and what not to. And it's a practice of learning new things all the time. So what am I doing right now? I am learning every day at a rate that I have not met other than my doctoral program. I am learning so fast and so deep and stretching my own capacity and my own belief in what's possible.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it is. At this point in time, it's a lot of reviewing of legal documents, major decisions, major decisions that have long-term consequences, figuring out what I can possibly hand off and how to have somebody there to hand it off to, preparing for all the different things that need to happen and helping my team to do that as well. And my team, the main part of my team I'm working with are my partners. So so that's a particular dynamic because they're my partners and I'm driving the company.
Right.
So it's a really interesting balance of nurturing those relationships and looking at how to do it and how to move us forward and literally educating myself and learning from my network and growing my network and continuing to look at where the vision's going to go and seeing what wants to adapt day to day.
So what's the most stressful thing about your job? Like if you could get rid of one thing from your job description, what would it be?
Okay, so I really, really love transformation and growth, if you haven't gotten that. So it's interesting because when I think of the most challenging things, I don't know if I would get rid of them. I love how this is growing me. It's stretched me to my very edges over this first year. It took a while to find my legs and know that I can do this and not feel overwhelmed. It was overwhelming for a little while.
I'm sure. and you know,
what am I doing?
Yeah. Anytime you step into a new position, especially one with shoes that big, right? It takes some time to figure out how you fit.
Yeah, it's a fairly audacious project for a startup. My first time raising money. Oh, we're going to raise $100 million rather than 200,000 that some founders are raising, although it's still the same basic concept.
Right. Well, no, that's good. I appreciate that. Right. You don't grow unless you have challenges. Right.
Yeah. I think the most daunting things are getting customers.
Right.
That's probably of the three most challenging things I'm dealing with, getting customers. Okay. So I need to figure out how to talk to NASA and what that entire world looks like and other parts of the government that might want to use space communications and the private sector and who's out there in the private sector and how do I connect with them?
What are they doing?
And what are they doing? And who knows how to do all this stuff? And do I bring someone else in to do it or do I do it myself or do I bring in consultants to help me do it myself? And what do they actually want? And what's the difference? And I don't really want to sell, and I do want us to get customers. So how do I find out what's actually the best fit and make sure that's clear? And I'm standing strongly for the fact that this can be a cooperative thing, that leading in today's economy does not have to mean elbowing out the competition, that there are ways that networks can be cooperative, that we as an industry can grow and support each other. So how do I hold that while navigating all these things? So if I could suddenly have the customers all signed contracts in my hands, if there was one thing to take off my plate, that would be the thing that I would do. And I love the stretching and the growing that I'm going through, figuring out how to do it.
Excellent. Yeah. Since you've been in the industry fully about 3 years now, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
4 years. I was consulting pretty regularly for that. So, but full.
And with this super interesting background of all these different industries and things that you've worked in, what do you find unique or different or challenging about the space industry?
A few things. Unique, interesting, challenging. It's this interesting paradox of the dreamers, the believers, the cutting edge science and technology and systems and ways of doing things that have been pretty consistent and not changing a lot for decades.
Right.
NASA's been around for 60 years and the essential way that they're doing deep space communications right now has been the same for about 60 years. Yeah. So It's interesting navigating that. It's navigating that as someone from outside the industry, as a woman. There are a lot of men in the industry.
There are.
There are.
Yeah, there are. That's correct.
Yeah. And
the stats that are in the podcast intro is 25% of the aerospace industry is women, and only 11% of history's space explorers have been women.
yeah.
11% women have gone, of the people who have gone to space, and 25% of the industry. So that's a problem we're trying to solve, though.
You know, what I love about it is that it makes these things, there's this idea that other people do big things. I think when I was a kid, I had like I said, I had a big dreamer side of me, but then I had a really kind of dampening, very small town rural life that would tend to dampen the big vision a little bit. People didn't think about going out and, building big communication networks in space. And there's something about the possible becoming possible. And in general, I like to believe in impossible things. This is making it real out here in space. I think it's true in many industries. I think in medicine, I think there are many industries that are just, in technology on many fronts. But we're making it real. So something that's really interesting about space is that it just makes me question all of the things I would have questioned before. I'm working with Rachel Lyons from Space for Humanity, and we are getting very clear, as I shared with you, that we are going to host a party on the moon as a fundraiser.
I know. I'm so excited. I'm so excited. I cannot wait for this party.
Right?
Yes. I will be
that's
there.
Possible.
With bells on.
Right? Right? Yes.
Right.
And you can look at the moon at night and really understand that we can go there. We're not just sending scientists there. We can go there and do things, and we can see our solar system, and we can understand it differently. And we are pioneers. There are people that used to go across lands, that sailed across oceans, not knowing if they're going to fall off the edge of the earth. We are going to go out there and everything's going to change. So there's something about that, about the impossible becoming possible, the improbable becoming realized, that's really incredible to me. And then there's the mundane of figuring out how to navigate government systems and how to figure out how to work as a team of partners in a startup. And we have sometimes different preferences. There's so many things.
So looking to the future a little bit, where do you see you and the company 10 years from now? So we talked just a minute ago about the moon party. First, let's say, when's the moon party? And then we'll talk about...
The moon party is a separate project. Yeah. It's 2030.
2030. Perfect. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Excellent.
Yeah. We're going to do that. And that's going to be in service of climate change and in service of sustainable expansion and exploration in space.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And then Aquarian Devices... Interestingly, we talk about the fact our pitch deck is based on the fact that we are building the space communications network, and it's very important. The industry is starving for it. I am delighted to do it. And for us, it's a stepping stone. So in 10 years, that space communications network will certainly have 5 satellites, maybe more. We will be doing quite a bit of communications for the moon and Mars, and probably 1 or 2 other locations. Maybe more than 5 by 10 years, but we'll see. I would imagine 5. And the thing that we really care about, actually, our founder, Michael Hackman, has for years been focused on wanting to solve and protect humanity from the next Carrington event or space weather. So maybe I'll say a little bit about what the Carrington event is. Yeah, please do. So space weather, I might like to call solar weather, is about the weather from the sun for us. And the Carrington event was something in 1859 where there's something called, I'll give a little bit of the science. So in the center of the sun is the corona, and there are these flares. They're basically solar flares that come from the center of the sun. And it's called a coronal mass ejection, or a CME. So it comes out of the sun, it burns through the sun's atmosphere. And if it happens to come to the earth, it burns through the earth's atmosphere. And that happens sometimes, and it's big solar flares. But if it happens twice in a row, if a second CME follows the first, then there's nothing to filter it out in the sun's atmosphere or the Earth's. Then the Earth has this experience of being for about 20 hours in I guess you could say like a rotisserie of free electricity and radiation. Now, this has happened pretty often in the past. They're guessing. The last I've heard was every 100 to 150 years.
Wow.
So it's been 160 years.
So we're overdue.
We're overdue. And in the Carrington event, the only real electricity that was happening at the time were telegraph machines. So the telegraph machines at the time either exploded or melted, or people unplugged them and they were still sending messages without being plugged in.
Whoa.
So we don't need to worry about, I don't know that these microphones would explode if it happened today, or our cell phones. Some things in the room might, some light bulbs might explode. Transformers will explode.
Oh, right.
Satellites will probably explode. The biggest thing that will happen is it will take down the grid for, the last estimates I heard from NASA were 4 to 6 years.
So the entire electrical grid on the whole
Globally.
planet, there would be no electricity for 4 to 6 years.
Yeah.
If one of these events happened.
Yeah. I mean, probably that's what would happen.
That's a little scary.
It's a pretty big deal. And then the ramifications of that are disastrous to civilization. Mm-hmm. So we believe that we believe that there are ways to prevent this, that there are ways to protect our system from this energy, but even better, that there's going to be a way that we can find to actually harness this energy and use it to fuel on-planet or off-planet endeavors. So we need this communications network in place, partly so that we can get more information about space weather. And there are countries working on this. There are a lot of people studying space weather. We need more capacity, more bandwidth in the space communications to allow more of that to come down so that we can have more than a 20-hour notice.
Right.
We need a good 2 weeks would be good. But we also need the capacity to have what Michael Hackman, our founder, calls a responsive awareness. He's already shared something with the government before that's looking at something to do with the satellites, that a way that they can respond that looks like it's actually being put into motion. So we need our technology out there to be able to respond, and our technology out there to help us be able to work with the technology here on Earth. So we don't know for sure what it looks like. We have some ideas brewing. So we need this communications piece in place, but we also, the monetization of that and the resources this gives us allows us to then become a major advocate for looking at this civilization threat, basically, and turn it into an opportunity. And to me, this gets very exciting because I want to bring people together. I want to bring not just space weather scientists and experts together. I want to bring people together from all different backgrounds that are brilliant to look at this problem in a new way and find the solution. And I want to set a precedent for us coming together to solve global issues as a species instead of as a country. So that's what I get really excited about. So in 10 years, we've got this network happening in the solar system, and we've solved the space weather threat and implemented a solution as a global community, and have now a way to move forward to continue to look at global challenges. Excellent.
That's a very exciting vision. I'm glad you guys are thinking about that and working to fix it. Yeah. That's important. So, all right, I want to switch gears here a little bit and talk about what you do outside of work, right? You, as most of us in this industry are pretty passionate people. We're passionate about space. A lot of us dedicate our time to space-related nonprofits or industry associations. But are there any nonprofit activities, volunteer activities, or causes that you're really passionate about?
I love that question. A lot of my energy right now is going toward birthing the baby of my business.
Right.
There's a lot there.
Absolutely.
I spend a lot of my life doing volunteer work, and it's interesting as I've become an entrepreneur. I notice that I do less than I used to. I've recently become involved with Space for Humanity and doing some support there. And I'm looking at different ways to continue supporting them.
Tell us a little bit about Space for Humanity. Give us a little, give her a little promo.
I love it. Well, you heard my background and that I studied some with consciousness. So I remember being amazed in maybe 2003. I was reading this book by Willis Harman, and he blew my mind. And he talked about astronauts going into space and seeing the Earth and having these massive changes.
The overview effect. Frank White wrote a whole book about the overview effect.
Exactly. Yeah. And it changes their lives. It changes everything. They come back and they see everything differently. And so it's this beautiful thing that happens to humans. They get to see the Earth and they say like, oh my God, it's so precious.
Right.
You see it from out there.
It's this tiny little blue marble floating in space with nothing protecting it, right?
Yeah, it's like the most precious, fragile thing.
Right.
Oh my God. And that's where everything I care about is right on there.
Right.
So
and you don't see borders because they don't exist from that perspective, right? And you see the entire Earth as a single thing, a single being, an organism of its own.
Yeah.
That.
So Space for Humanity is sponsoring people to go to space. So it's not only the very wealthy that are passionate about space, they can get these rides to go up and have this experience, but they are bringing people that are looking to bring impact to the world, your everyday person who wants to bring impact to space. So they are a nonprofit that are raising money for that cause. And I think it is beautiful because this comes back to, what is space, I think inspires all of us when we really get into it, when we really take the time to notice, to look at the stars, to think about what we're doing. And so Space for Humanity, I think is in a really gorgeous way helping to bring that back.
I agree. Yeah. So what's your vision for, we've talked a lot today about devices and robots and all these things that are going to space, but what's your vision for humanity's future in space?
Wow. I love that question. It's going to change everything. So I've said for a while that when someone is preparing to leave, if you've got a home and a child is preparing to leave the home and a child leaves the home is impacted.
Right.
And so we are, as a species, some of the children are preparing to leave the home and are going to leave the home. So it's going to change Earth, right? It's going to actually impact us here more, I think, than we realize, because the possibility, the reality that part of our species is not just traveling out there, but is going to start settling, is going to start doing things. We're going to start probably mining. We're going to start settling, exploring, growing food. It's going to change what's possible again. And then it's going to just stretch us into the next thing. So I think it's going to change Earth. And that's really interesting, and also help us to find our care and our balance with Earth in a new way. And I really love science fiction. So I've read a lot of books that have all kinds of ideas about what happens in space. And I imagine the reality is we find a way to go and spend time there. And I think we're pretty connected. And I think that it might not be as fast as we think it would be, and it might be faster than we would think it would be.
Well, I hope. I have a speed at which I hope it goes, and then I have a realistic, a more realistic number that's probably more probable, right?
Yeah.
So, but hopefully on Elon's schedule, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Perfect.
Bring
Perfect.
us.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So, and when it's time, when the settlements are ready, are you going to go?
To settle or to visit?
Either.
I will definitely visit. Yeah. I'm already planning. I'm going to go to the moon soon.
Well,
sooner
for the
than
party.
later.
Yeah,
for the party.
Yeah. But would you stay?
I might stay for a while.
I would stay if I knew I could come home to visit.
Exactly. Here's the thing. I love. So I've also spent some time studying sustainability, eco-psychology, deep ecology. I'm really interested in the fact that we are a part of this planet, that we don't just live on the earth.
Right.
That there's an ecosystem here that birthed us, that we are a part of, that there are two super organisms on the planet, according to E.O. Wilson from Harvard. It's ants and humans, and we're roughly the same mass of both.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
Right. It's fascinating. I think that there's a lot I could say about that, but I think it's really, I think we're a part of something really beautiful here. And I love it. And I'm also interested in how that translates. There's parapsychology and eco-psychology and our relationship to nature. What does deep cosmology look like? What is the psychology of our relationship to like actually living in space, and our relationship to being more intimate with something off of this planet? So I would love to go know that. I would love to go be part of the explorers. And I want to come back and lay in the grass and stare at the sky and swing on a swing set. And I hope to have kids, or at least my nephews and my niece and people that I love that I want to hug in person. So I would want some of both, but I will go. I will go, and I will support the going, and I would like to support the healthy culture. Is that something that I'm really passionate about? In company, as a leader, right. People are often looking at all these metrics and objectives, and it's like, yeah, what drives those is culture. It's the culture. Culture drives behaviors.
Right.
And then those behaviors get the things done. And so I really care about healthy culture that leads to where we want to go. And so I'm really interested in supporting the cultural health of what's happening there, because I think a lot of people have their eyes on the physical health. So, yes.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I really, really enjoyed learning about your journey, and so excited to have you running this amazing company in this amazing industry. So thank you for being here.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure. I'm grateful for this podcast and that you're bringing all of our voices out and your voice. So
happy to.
Thank you, Megan.
Mission Eve is a production of the Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to educating entrepreneurs and investors about their respective challenges and opportunities as it relates to space. Megan Crawford has been your host and executive producer. Aaron Pagel is the executive director for the center and producer and editor for this episode. Marketing and communications for Mission Eve is managed by Nikki Martinez. Theme music has been composed by Liz Fole. If you'd like to support this podcast, please visit patreon.com/missioneve to become a monthly subscriber. We have multiple tiers available with benefits like personalized thank yous, access to limited edition t-shirts, opportunities to engage with our interviewees via online Ask Me Anything sessions, and small group gatherings with Megan Crawford when available. Any support you can offer will go a long way to helping us continue to tell the stories of the women who are making life in space a reality. Please follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/Center for Space, Commerce, and Finance, Twitter at CSCF_nonprofit, and LinkedIn at linkedin.com/company/CSCF. Thank you very much for listening.